everybody. On behalf of the Regenerative Society Foundation, it is my pleasure to welcome you tonight to the panel entitled Interconnected Policies for Rural Development, How Regenerative Economy Can Drive a Change. First of all, I would like to thank our host tonight, the UN International Fund for Agricultural Development. We are here at COP26 as their guests at their pavilion. And it is my pleasure to introduce you Gladys Morales, who is a Senior Innovation Advisor at the Change Delivery and Innovation Unit at the Office of the President and Vice President of Ifad. Gladys has led the digital transformation of government and UN agencies projects in Latin America, Asia, and Europe. Before joining Ifad, Gladys was an advisor at the International Poverty Reduction Center in China, where she led the design of digital platforms and established partnerships and knowledge networks for the Global Poverty Reduction and Inclusive Growth Portal. Please, Gladys.
Thank you so much, Giovanna. Ifad is very proud to be partnering today with the Regeneration Society Foundation and with the Italian Ministry for Ecological Transition. During this week and the week before, we heard about how small-scale farmers are the most vulnerable to climate change and are also the least able to cope with it. We have also heard about how 80% of the food produced in sub-Saharan and the Sahel region in West Africa is produced by small-scale farmers. So it is fundamental that we keep small-scale farmers at the center of the negotiations on climate change. We have also heard how indigenous populations are the ones that have contributed the least to climate change and are still the most affected by it. During these 2 weeks, Ifad has provided a very unique space to hear the voices of indigenous populations, of rural small-scale farmers, of women, of youth, and the people that are most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. At Ifad, and through the Change, Delivery, and Innovation Unit, we're committed to innovation, we're committed to digitalization. Ifad designed a strategy for ICT for development and intends aims for ICT for development to be a tool in finding solutions to leverage and deliver better impact and better results for our beneficiaries. Cohesion and economic dynamism is extremely important to guarantee that we prevent the negative effects of economic migration. It is fundamental that we find through innovation and digitalization tools and ideas and that we test them so that we can provide solutions that can help us to cope with the challenges that we're facing. Without innovation and digitalization, it will be almost impossible to find solutions that can help us deliver impact and build resilience in rural communities. So with that, I would like to give back the floor to Giovanna so that she can introduce the panel. Giovanna.
So today we will talk about the work and the first pilot program of the Regenerative Society Foundation. The foundation was born about 1 year ago from an idea and a vision by a group of Italian entrepreneurs, namely the Illy Foundation, Chiesi, Davine, Smutti, Mediolanum, Lombardo Die, and Nativa, together with the Sustainable Development Foundation of Italy. And the foundation have been researching and studying and going deeper in the subject, in the topics of regenerative economy at many levels. I would like to give the word to the co-chair, together with Professor Jeffrey Sachs, the co-chair of the Regenerative Society Foundation, Andrea Illy, who's also chairman of Illy Cafe and co-founder of the Ernesto Illy Foundation. He will talk to us about the foundation vision and future programs.
Thank you, Giovanna. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As Giovanna introduced, the Regenerative Society was born in order to promote the idea and the ideal of a regenerative society. What do we mean with that? The fundamental idea is that the current socioeconomical model is systemically unsustainable because it keeps extracting resources from the planet, depleting them and never restoring them. And above all, it continues to generate a lot of residues in any kind of form, greenhouse gases, agrochemical contaminants, microplastics, you name it, scrap and waste of any kind, which accumulate in the environment and will eventually lead us to self-destruction. There is no reason why it couldn't change, because nature, which is much older than human beings, is organized in a way that for each biosynthetic process, you have a reverse one, biodegradation one, which use the same resources, and this is circular and continues over and over and over and again eternally without never generating let's say, residues. So why shouldn't we try to mimic nature and pursue a model which is really sustainable? This is the idea of the regenerative societies. Regenerative society consequently needs to be, first of all, circular, fully circular. Then, of course, it need to be carbon-free. So we need to decarbonize our economy, but we also need to rebuild a carbon stock which has been depleted in the past. We need to focus on biodiversity because ecosystems are resilience and health are directly related to biodiversity. And last but not least, we also need to have a significant impact on at social level on people well-being in terms of health and happiness. These topics will be addressed by our scientific director, Paolo Vines. As you can understand, agriculture is is number one probably in the foundation scope. Agriculture is relevant not only because it's a significant carbon emitter, but also because we depend for our survival from agriculture. The challenges in agriculture are very complex because before mitigating our 18% carbon emissions, we also have to adapt to climate change in order to ensure food security. The very good news is that adaptation and mitigation actions for adaptation are the same as for mitigations. We are talking about the so-called non-conventional agriculture, which is based on soil carbon enrichment, biodiversity, and there are several diverse practices. One of them is regenerative agriculture. So I had the opportunity as a chemist to take a sabbatical myself and to study a framework of what has been named virtuous agriculture, which is regenerative and beneficial. How does it work? The idea is that soil organic carbon enrichment nourishes soil biodiversity and fertility and makes soils not only more resilient, but healthier all in all. This is a very important factor because carbon sequestration can only be done until now through biosynthesis. So that means that agriculture can be put at this service, an environmental service of recovering ecosystems and recovering land and eventually rebuilding, also contribute to rebuild our carbon stock. But also, by doing so, we also will be able to conserve and possibly restore a lot of the biodiversity which has been lost in the past. There is this dual benefit, not only that adaptation goes along with mitigation, not only that carbon sequestration goes along with biodiversity conservation. But as you can understand, soil health and soil resilience produces foods which are healthier because you need much less agrochemistry. You don't need so much, you know, pesticides or fertilizers and so on. So you have food. You have, first of all, ecosystems which are free from these residues, but also foods that you eat. So there is this dualism, this dual benefit as recommended by the IPCC between soil health and human health. This has to be proven, of course, with basically big data, technology, database, data mining, but intuitively is, and also chemically is quite easy to understand that if you have no poisonous substances in your food and on the opposite, you have more beneficial substances, thanks to more biodiversity, you will have a more beneficial food. So this is the reason why the name of this framework is virtuous agriculture. It's not only because it is virtuous by itself, but because there is a virtuous cycle given the dual benefit. So we are here today to present the idea to start bringing this, let's say, systemic approach in Africa. Why Africa? Because Africa is potentially the largest agricultural land, because it now only lives and depends upon subsistence agriculture with a very little organization. And there are also certain hurdles to be overcome in order to organize such a new framework, which will be addressed more on the how than in the what. I'm talking about the what, and the team led by Alessio Colucci and Luca will also speak about the how to lead this system. We believe that what we aim to do is to build an exponential system which would be able to double the impact in terms of agricultural production, in terms of environmental service, but in terms of social impact every 5 years. This is what we aim. And we will start from one country and 3 different agricultures so that we can build some proof of concept in a very pragmatical way, and then see which of these proof of concept can be scaled up to other countries in Africa, because it's so large, so big, and there are so many countries, but also in the future adding new crops. And one last point, which I think is very relevant for our understanding. We need, and we hope to do so with this experimental project, to build new framework, because we cannot compare this regenerative agriculture approach to the conventional agriculture one, because the concept of productivity is totally different. When we speak about this, if we want to stretch the concept of non-conventional agriculture into agroecology, where you combine non-conventional agriculture together with forestation, you can understand that you can fix a lot of carbon. You can understand that you can, let's say, consolidate a lot of biodiversity and produce many different crops. So the productivity is not comparable with one monocrop, big land with a high intensity fertilization and so on, because it's a different model. And this is why we will need to build an economical framework based on the principle of total factor productivity, which will be probably using less resources, so less expensive to grow. The total factor productivity will probably be at par with conventional agriculture, but at least you know that you work with a benefit for the environment and with a benefit for our human health instead of doing the opposite. So this is our project, and I pass back the word to Giovanna, who is moderating this.
Thank you, Andrea. I take this opportunity to remind everybody that you can pose your questions to all the panelists, to each of the panelists, either through the VVox for the in-present people and or through the Q&A box if you are connected on Zoom. Now I would like to give the word to Professor Paolo Vineis, who is a chair of environmental epidemiology at Imperial College London and visiting scientist at the Italian Institute of Technology. He's the leading researcher in the field of molecular epidemiology. His latest research focuses on environmental exposures and intermediate markers from omic platforms. He also investigates the effects of climate change on non-communicable diseases, and he has become recently the scientific director of the Regenerative Society Foundation.
Thank you, Giovanna. I want to tackle essentially two issues. One is the role of health, because I believe, and many of us believe, that health is central in the discourse on climate change. And then I will address the role of science and the role of a scientific board or a scientific committee in the regenerative society as an example of the role that scientists can have in a regeneration enterprise. So first of all, health. I have a slide. I don't know whether it can be shown. The slide essentially shows that the trade flows from low-income countries to high-income countries. These are the trades mainly of foods and other goods from, as I said, low-income countries to high-income countries in general across countries. But the point is that in magenta, you see the environmental impact. So the green lines express the entity of the flows of trades, and the magenta areas represent the environmental impact, which is essentially zoonosis. That is human diseases due to exposure to microorganisms transmitted by animals. So, for example, COVID-19 is a zoonosis. So this is a clear representation of the fact that the current way of production has a huge impact on low-income countries, also in terms of health. And climate change is part of this picture. For example, just to mention a few figures, as many as 295 billion work hours have been lost by agricultural workers in low-income countries due to heat waves or in any case changes in temperature in 1 year. Or diseases that are in fact deaths, mortality attributed to nutrition and nutritional imbalances includes 10 million people each year. So there is a close link between agriculture, the food system, and also the health impact that can be related to the trades I mentioned before, or can be related to imbalances in food. Africa is a very topic continent area because it suffers from a double burden. It suffers from the double burden of infectious diseases I mentioned before, the zoonosis, which are very often related to environmental degradation, and also the burden of diseases of rich countries. This burden is increasing. The non-communicable diseases are increasing also in Africa and low-income countries. A typical example is the double burden of malnutrition and obesity in Africa or Southeast Asia. So this is to say that there is a very close connection between different aspects. I just refer to food production, to the food system, to agriculture, to low-income countries, and in particular Africa, to say that if we focus on agriculture and the food systems, we see a lot of problems, but we see also a lot of opportunities. Problems, well, for example, droughts, because last year 19% of the land surface was affected by drought, and this is increasing. Or still among the problems, infectious diseases, you know that diseases like Zika virus or chikungunya are spreading to high-income countries, but essentially they are endemic and their frequency is increasing in low-income countries. So these are the problems, but also there are a lot of opportunities because, as Andrea Illy said, agriculture can offer opportunities to become a carbon sink, for example. There are opportunities for carbon sequestration and so on. So this is approximately the picture. This is where the foundation wants to work with some interesting examples we will hear later around the dual aspect of health and climate change, and in general, I would say environmental degradation. Now, what can science provide and what can a scientific board provide to such a foundation? The foundation is new, but the scientific board is much newer in the sense that I have been appointed very recently. Well, we may play many roles. First of all, we have to provide evidence, like the figures I just mentioned that come from a very interesting effort done by the Lancet journal, Lancet Countdown, which provides regularly figures about the impact of climate change on health. Second, we can create an inventory of experiences and also monitor the gaps between the needs and the knowledge we have, and therefore suggest new fields for acquisition of knowledge. And then a more ambitious goal is also to create criteria for the assessment of enterprises, of industries, of farmers themselves. From the managerial point of view, well, we know the ESG system of appraisal, the ESG rating system, which from my point of view has many limitations. For example, doesn't consider health, doesn't consider mental health, well-being. Essentially, it includes the environmental, social, and the governance issues. Well, mental health and well-being are probably included in the social component, but health is not prominent there. So our goals include the provision and development of criteria to help enterprises, but also small farmers, to develop their own goals and to be assessed in terms of sustainability and of regeneration, and therefore increase their, let's say, viability even in the market, because their value will increase. So there is an increase in value from multiple angles, which include the environmental impact, the quality of food produced, the quality of life of the farmers themselves. Just to invert that tendency that I showed at start, that is this, in a way, unilateral relationship where goods are transferred to high-income countries, and the environmental degradation is mainly in low-income countries with the health consequences I mentioned. Just remember that in high-income countries, the intake of meat is 4 to 6 times higher than in low-income countries, and meat has a huge impact on climate change itself. Well, people say that about 20–25% of greenhouse gases are attributable to the food system, where agriculture is a big component, and of course, animal breeding is a big component with all the implications in terms of zoonosis. So these are the goals we are setting for ourselves, and we need a very multidisciplinary scientific board to be able to address all these issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paolo. Now we will connect with Alessio Colussi and Luca Linovi, co-founders of FarmShime from Kenya. Luca was the executive director of a Global Resilience Partnership, a joint initiative of USAID, Rockefeller Foundation, and SIDA, UNFAO representative in Kenya and Somalia, and a senior manager at several technologies companies. He has a master's degree in tropical agriculture and a PhD in agricultural economics. Alessio has over 30 years of experience working with farmers in more than 30 countries. He was head of agribusiness at UNFAO in Kenya, where he led a project that trained 80,000 farmers in conservation agriculture and connected them to buyers. Previously, he managed the green coffee supply chain for Illy Cafe, and he has a master's degrees in agricultural science. Luca and Alessio, welcome, and I leave the word to you.
Thank you, Joanne. Good evening to everybody from Nairobi. We are effectively, we've been working extensively on the topics that we're going to talk about. And I'm really, really happy and proud of listening the topics that have been discussed up to now, which are central to the future development of Africa. I think it's really time to change framework, to change paradigm. As Andrei was saying, I think is a critical moment. We have to move from the vicious cycle that have been discussed to the virtuous cycle that has been portrayed. And we hope that in the few minutes here, we will be able to give some ideas, at least how to do it. If possible, if we can have our slides. I will start from a bit heavy title, but I think very important, because it's a systemic problem, what we are trying to address. And we want to see prosperous communities in a relatively rapid time, but with the concern and the constraint that we're going to discuss today. Can I have the next one? So there's been a number of things that have been hinted, but we want to touch some of the difficult aspects. Often programs of development are not long enough to give the time for systems to change, and often are over-focused on a single results, which make it very difficult to achieve the result that need to be achieved. At the same time, can become too broad and too complicated. What we are trying to do here is to see how committed community, which are suffering the same consequences of problems that have been suffering over the last 30, 50 years, will be able to move forwards in changing the environment with a dual benefit, and Andrei was mentioning before, while changing their income and revenue. Can I have the next one? Now, that slides look a bit difficult to read and super dense. The reality is that it's a very, very synthetic version of all the things that are going to happen during this program. But the central point are the 5 bubbles around, which are assuming that if we want to change the things, the first thing that need to be changed is income in the pocket of the farmer, changing the soil capacity of sequestrating carbon, increasing their stock, and in changing biodiversity, with an effect to create and trigger mechanisms that will help health, as was mentioned before, as well as social benefit in a connected manner. Can I have the next one? So what are our focus? What really the program will look at? Andrea has been pushing us very strongly to look always at the how. And so we want to really start on the first very important thing. If we continue to live in a cycle of poverty, nothing will change. And yet the possibility is there, because with technology, with platform, with digital frameworks, it's very simple if the market works with us to allow the farmer to trade automatically with very large buyer, and they intermediating the value chain allows them to have a much higher value. By the way, they can also decarbonize their land, because we are supporting methodology as non-conventional agriculture, as was mentioned before, that allows the farmer to increase the capacity of sequestrating carbon at the same time, meanwhile providing higher quality, higher quantity, and attractive goods for the global community. Everything has to happen through interconnected framework. Unfortunately, still today, a lot of the African smallholders live in a relatively deconnected world where it's very difficult to create the process that lead that kind of shortening the value chain, the intermediation of the process. The good news is that we are working with a lot of women. The majority of smallholders are women, which has been often exploited. And through technology, we are able to put in their pocket directly the money that they need to be paid to move forward. That is becoming a gender revolution in its own. And as it was said, we are aiming at exponential growth. In maximum 5 years, we want to see doubling the income, doubling the carbon sequestrated, dramatically increase access to education and to health. Can I have the next one? Now, we've done a relatively initial map of stakeholder. I think it's critical for us to say that this type of program can only work with very large partnership. We cannot imagine to have a system where we are not putting together the UN system, the donor community, but at the same time, the buyers, the traders, the technology providers, financial instrument, policy player, all of them. And it's critical, that is a very initial map, but it's critical to move the mechanism forward. Can I have the next one? So from here, Alessio will take over to describe what are the operational seed projects that Andreili was mentioning before.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Please, can I have the next one? Next slide, please. Yes. One of the three initiatives that we are proposing is based on coffee. Traditionally, coffee in Kenya has been always treated as a single crop, and this has created a number of issues. The proposal here is to basically work on the model that was developed in India with a coffee cultivation which is intercropped with a number of other species which are enriching the biodiversity, they are enriching the soil in carbon, and of course, if we couple that with also with a number of arboreal species, meaning trees, this effect can be even spurred further. The experience has been already proven as very viable. We have to simply implementing in Kenya, where there is already a similar initiative that has been started in Bungoma. Our aim is to scale up this initiative in Bungoma and in other parts of the country. The next slide, please. This other situation is a different context, agri-context. Basically, this one refers to the large areas that are cultivated with cereals in Kenya. Even here, the monocropping system is very, very common. Of course, in alternative to this model, which is very, very extractive and very little effective in terms of preserving the environment, we have already tested, and we are currently continuing testing the approach of the conservation agriculture. As you can see in the picture, this is a combination of green gram cultivated on a mulched soil. The soil has been mulched with residues of maize that was grown previously. In this case, we can enrich again the soil very quickly with organic material, organic carbon in particular. This fertility increases dramatically. From previous experiences, I can tell you that in the span of 2 years, we can duplicate easily the quantity of carbon sequestered in the first 50 centimeters of soil. So it is something that has to be promoted, although it is already adopted to, let's say, to a certain scale here in Kenya. But we need to push it forward, because this is the best way to continue to do agriculture actually here in Kenya. One more thing on this topic, we are coupling this model with the use of IoTs, especially I'm referring to special sensors that are used for the analysis of the elements of fertility of the soils. Analysis that can be done in 30 seconds time, and they are quite accurate, precise, and absolutely much cheaper than what any farmer is supposed to pay going to the traditional methods. The next slide, please. The third environment we want to tackle, so the third initiative is targeting the agro-pastoralist areas of the northern Kenya. They are dry areas. A lot of trees have been cut down because of the production of charcoal for heating and for producing food. So we want to simply regenerate the indigenous vegetation, introducing water in a very sustainable way, using modern technology that extracts water with the help of sun and with the reverse osmosis process, without any kind of battery, without any kind of residue in the process. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Now it is my pleasure, last but not least for sure, to give a word to Renzo Tomellini. Renzo is Chief Technical Advisor at the Italian Ministry of Ecological Transition. He has a long career in the European Union, which started in 1991. He was managing the ECSC Steel Research and Technological Development Program. He has worked in the Unit Added Value Materials and Directorate General Research and Innovation, and initiated the European Commission's Inter-Service Group, Nanosciences and Nanotechnologies. Amongst others, he prepared for the provisions to bring to its end the ECSC Treaty and to launch the new research fund for coal and steel. Welcome, Mr. Tomellini.
Thank you. Actually, I'm not here as myself, first of all, but to bring the greetings of Professor Dr. Roberto Cingolani, Minister for Ecological Transition of the Republic of Italy. Professor Cingolani couldn't be here, and I would have loved to be here with you this evening, but asked me to come and present his greetings and his deep appreciation for what is now currently made. Extremely important what the society is doing and the pilot that the society has initiated. Why this? Many argument has been already raised and comments made. Let me add something that has maybe not been said. First of all, the concept of creating this pilot. I was in Milano where Ms. Greta Thunberg was mentioning using the word blah blah in some respect, and I cannot give points according to blah blah scale of Ms. Thunberg, but from my reading and my interpretation, what has been said, this is exactly a case of concrete action. What is said, to walk the talk, and not only to talk the talk, but to walk the talk, to do the things that we are saying, and to be courageous, to expose oneself on the ground with a vision supported by a managerial approach, by scientific and technical data, and to put on the ground this as a project. In reading, this is absolutely in line with the Sustainable Development Goals, with the Green Deal of the European Union and our reference documents, the political vision to which the Italian Republic adhere. And we know that when we read these documents, automatically we find many trade-offs. If something happens, something else has to be modulated, mitigated, compromises has to be found. this project, this pilot project, is extremely important because of an integrated and systemic approach that tries to address the issues of regeneration, of agroforestry, of well-being of population, and approaches this in a systemic manner to overcome the trade-offs. In some cases, trade-offs can be overcome by research and innovation, by technological progress, but the innovation is on processes, on products, and on organization. And this is a remarkable example of innovation in the process, in the product, and in particular in the organization. It was mentioned the classical trade-off between soil health and human health, and is exactly what wants to be overcome and by this process. It's not either or; it is both are taken into consideration. I was mentioning the European policy. Italy is a proud member of the European Union. The chief scientific advisors of the European Union. There is a group of chief scientific advisors, 7 ladies and gentlemen, top scientists who deliver scientific advice to the European Commission and the European institutions, have already delivered scientific opinion on health and climate change and food. And it's a pleasure to see that the initiative of Andrea Illy and his partners go very well in the direction of this work. So based on science, not based on empty concepts. We know that out of all the land that is available for agriculture, around 70% of the land is used for producing food for feedstock for animals, and only 30% is used for directly produced food for people. This is also interesting how this kind of project has the potential to bring this 70 to 30% proportion up to a more favorable use of the soil. It was mentioned by the people who just spoke out from Kenya about the characteristic of the soil. So about all these potential for a technological approach that integrates the characteristic of the soil, chemical composition, quantity of water. This can be easily then be coupled with geo information and with satellite data in order to best optimize the processes. This kind of project is a pilot project, is a precious initiative then, that has the potential to be replicated, to be extended, and to be copied in a positive manner in other regions and for other crops and other situations. It was mentioned also the point of the traceability. The famous phrase is what gets measured gets managed, or in negative, what is not measured will not be managed. So also the fact of measuring, of using sensors, of measuring the impact, it is precious, because it is with numbers that we can build something solid and something valuable and reliable. Other element that brings this to the attention to the minister, to Professor Cingolani, is the fact that it's a private initiative. Now in this COP26, we are listening at political leaders engaging in spending more public money for the ecological transition, for contrasting, mitigating effects of climate change or adapting to it. This is a case where private sector engages itself. The challenge of the ecological transition is a grand challenge. Is of extreme complexity. I will not give a talk about this here. We know that in any case, all the actors in society have to be engaged, each one according to their own characteristics and potential. Now, to see that the private sector engages itself, engages in a risky, courageous means risk. So I think it was Ernest Hemingway who was saying that the important choices in life are the crossroads where there is no indication. So important to see that private sector is engaged in developing a pilot that becomes a case study for the sustainable approach in agriculture and forestry. And it was mentioned this concept of sustainability, and we know very well that sustainability traditionally is articulated into the three chapters of ecological, of economic, and of social, where social means attention to well-being, means happiness. Andrea Illy spoke about happiness very clearly, but also inclusivity. So extremely important to see that this kind of pilot tackles sustainability really fully with its three main constituent pillars. Last word, because I see that the time is going over, that I want to mention is that if this is requested and asked for by the project owners, Minister Cingolani is very honored and glad to give its formal endorsement. It is an Italian initiative, and in Italian language it's called patrocinio. So it formally endorsed this project in order to show formally this is support to this valuable initiative. And good luck and viel success.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now it's time to take some questions from our connected public, let's say. I have a first question for Mr. Illy, comments and question actually. Thank you for that on-point presentation, Mr. Illy. Do you have a plan on how to assure a localized approach, regenerative approach that is adapted to the place, history, culture, ecosystem, most resilient species, local seeds, climate, soils, etc., and the cycling and spreading of knowledge?
Well, I think that as far as this project is concerned, this measurable which has been requested can be better explained by the local team who presented the project. But I will spend a little word about the model, because I spoke about scalability, the vision how to try to escalate such a framework. We are also experimenting at Illy Cafe ourselves. You need a pilot farm, and you need a school, and you need a good agreement with the local authorities. So we are now pioneering regenerative agriculture in coffee in Ethiopia, planting in a new plantation called Kokere in the Oromia region, where coffee was not grown before, in agroforestry. So we are planting coffee and trees at the same time, as well as other agricultural crops. It's a community of 2,000 people. Of course, we build schools internally in the plantation so that they can not only elevate their agronomical practices, but also their nutritional ones so that they can have a healthier diet. And as soon as this, of course, this plantation was born to be carbon-free and regenerative, as far as this new pilot plantation is generating new knowledge, it will be transferred to other growers through a school, which has been founded in the partnership, of course, founded by the coffee and tea authorities in partnership with ILI and with UNIDO. It's a center of excellence. And the idea is that with two assets, like a pilot plant and a school, you can hope, let's say, to impact the overall coffee agriculture in Ethiopia. And from there, if the scale up is positive, that means that we can have an impact. We can replicate the same model in other countries and so on and so forth. In Kenya, with these other crops, we are pursuing the exact same model, scalability by experimentation and education. But maybe Alessio and Luca, we want to say something more about the specific question about how to address the Kenyan project.
Yes, yes, Andrea, thank you. We have planned to use the tool that we normally use in all the activities that we are bringing forward, which is a digital platform, okay, where all farmers are registered, all activities done in the field are registered, all what happened is registered. There is a full transparency in all the trading activity. So all the information are spread across the platform and across the farmers that are registered on that digital platform. In the same way, even the technical information can be shared by the same means and in the same exact way, because there is a repository included in the platform from where all the information are stored and can be exchanged on demand.
Maybe just two very rapid things. One of the questions was also about local seeds. We are a profound believer that the ecological development happens locally and has a market globally, which create that triggers that makes the system becoming more scalable, more exponential, growing and faster. So when we're talking about local seed, the third example that Alessio presented is all about using local species for doing high value oils, to do high value alloy, to produce feed for the animal in an environmental sensitive manner and in a way which provides growth to the ecosystem. But it's all built on real local viable solution, which doesn't mean that all the seeds local are okay or that all local solutions are okay, but all the local viable solutions which are eco-friendly are definitely there. And the measurements are all across, which are going to be driving all the scale up, as has been said now a few times. And I think it's very important because that accelerates the process of scaling up, both in terms, as it was said before, in terms of reproduction and also in terms of expansion outside the country.
Thank you. I have now a question for Professor Vinais. You mentioned health consequences of climate change and environmental degradation and health benefits of sustainable forms of agriculture. Don't you think that health should be put at the center of climate change conversation also here at COP26?
Yes, absolutely. And many of us think that it's not at the center, and it is a pity because of the idea of co-benefits that I tried to illustrate before. In other words, climate change is tackled, mitigated not only through technological tools, but also, say, the transition to renewables, but also through changes in our lifestyle and ways of production that bring together mitigation of climate change and health benefits. And the health benefits can be perceived and appreciated immediately or very soon. and can be appreciated here and now, so to say, whereas climate change mitigation is not, unfortunately, a long-term goal, but still it is a longer-term goal compared to the improvement of the health of humankind and ourselves. So I believe that, unfortunately, health is not at the center of this COP26, and there have been several attempts to draw the attention of the organizers and then many institutions involved to the importance of health. For example, British universities have done a video which is available on the social media, which is called "What the Health?" to say where is the health in COP26. And also we are trying to have not only the word health, but a reference to health and to co-benefits included in the final documents. I'm not sure this will happen, but this is also a plea in order to have this included in the final documents. We cannot afford a very restricted view of a mitigation of climate change just based on the technological transition. We also need to consider the importance of health and well-being and mental health as well.
Thank you. Another question just came in to all panelists. What are the key policies you need in place to scale in other countries? Who wants to take a question? I would say,
because you say policies and then you come to me. No, then you have to ask the other countries what you are referring to. What is the role of the political power, public administration, is to create the frame, the administrative frame, and the conditions to have the innovation like this kind of project that can be replicated, that can be scaled up, can be improved, can be changed, modified, and so on. If I may use a reference to the image of the person who spread the seed, and then it is written in our culture, it's written that the miracle is not only with the seed that should be a good seed, but the land, the soil makes the miracle. So when good seed, the same good seed, goes where there is a bad crop, is lost. When there are stones, with the first rain, goes away. When there is sand and dry soil, cannot prosper. But when goes where the soil is favorable, there is right moisture and right conditions, the good seed gives the good plant, and the good plant gives the fruits. And this is exactly what is the example of a good project, a good pilot project, good idea that then should be hosted and should prosper in the right environment. And the public administrations, they should intervene in order to favor this. We live in an era where there is mobility of capitals, mobility of people, mobility of ideas. So now the attractivity is a key issue. So political power, public administrations have to make attractive their own country, their own community, in order to attract the money, the capital, the industries, the idea, the young people. And how you do it? This you do it with security, with good administration, with good justice, with social services, with universities, with production of knowledge, and this is the way to attract. So now, what can be done? Attractivity. The public administration should make attractive their countries, their provinces, their communities, in order to have the young people, to have the capital, to have the companies coming in, and to retain the brilliant minds that are in their countries.
Mr. Illy wanted to take the word.
If I would have a magic stick, I would create policies for at least three things. Number one, economical incentives for agriculture, only for agriculture which is sustainable, beneficial for the environment and for human health. Not incentivizing simply quantity, but putting quality on top. This is a big topic. Remember that there is 1 billion subsidized per year in worldwide in agriculture, and these are mostly focused on simply quantitative production. Second policy I would create is, which is undergoing conversation even here at COP26, is to have a market for carbon credits so that we can pay growers in addition for the food that they produce, also for the environmental service they provide, which will be creating an incentive for carbon sequestration, for forestation, for biodiversity, and so on. And the third, just in case, if I have an extra magic stick, would be a gigantic educational project, because this is a very complex environment, and we need to put knowledge on top. This is an educational event that would put together 2 large databases, one for agriculture and agronomy and one for nutrition, and then start pulling out knowledge from all the possible correlation between the way you grow and the impact on human health, and educating producers, even regulators and consumers about these correlations. This would be my 3 policies.
Thank you. I have another question. Agriculture has not had the attention it deserves during COP. What can be done to help the conversation become holistic? Paolo or Renzo maybe wants to answer, or Gladys.
My side, this is a statement, it's not a question. Agriculture did not receive enough importance. This is a statement. Okay, this is a point of view. I think that many issues are maybe not visible enough, are not said loud enough, but they received the great relevance. I mean, just going around in the pavilions and seeing the program in this COP, I see a lot of interventions and events on this issue, and this is a case. Now, when we talk about ecological transition, we talk about a different way of producing energy, distributing energy, transporting energy, using energy, making agriculture, producing food, transporting food, managing food. 30% of the food is still wasted. Let's not forget this, parenthesis. Of how we travel, how we dress up, how we consume. So it is a grand transition, as I said before. And agriculture is one of the key pillars. And now the point is this enough, not enough? I think that if there are these kind of comments, it can be taken into account for a next edition of COP. But for sure, agriculture is fully central here, like it is central energy. If it is not always said and repeated, it doesn't mean that it's far from the focus. But I don't want to defend necessarily the organization and the agenda here. Maybe Paolo, you want to give more comments on this?
Yes, I have a comment. That is, I have the impression that much of the focus of research, including funding, at least in the UK and also in other European countries, has gone to urban health and urban-related issues, not so much on agriculture, well, on rural issues. And also the rural-urban divide should be revisited. There is also some degree of prejudice that is all the good and the bad things happen in cities, which is clearly a biased picture. Just to give an example, we just discovered last year, thanks to a huge research done by my colleague Majid Ezzati at Imperial College, that obesity in children is increasing mainly in rural areas, against the prejudice that, as I said, transitions happens in cities. So we have probably to refocus the balance between urban and rural.
Please, may I ask you to jump in on this subject?
Agencies in the United Nations like Ifad are investing a lot so that rural voices and the voices of the most vulnerable are heard. But it is true, we're not doing enough. The investments in rural communities, the investments in sustainable agriculture are still not enough. So governments and the members of IFAD need to do more to support the development of rural communities. So yeah, I do agree with the comment that we need to do more. We need collectively to invest more and make rural small-scale farmers the center of the negotiations about climate change. I would like to take advantage of the opportunity to correct myself. Small-scale farmers are responsible for 80% of the food production of sub-Saharan Africa and parts of Asia. So that's why I also think that the work that the foundation aims to implement is so important here, right? Because they're also focusing on an area, on a region in the country that we really need to focus on, and and challenges that we really need to address.
Thank you, Gladys. I have another question for Mr. Illy. Can you tell us more about how we can get the private sector involved in your work? What are the challenges you face in getting the private sector involved?
Thank you. So the foundation business model is to enable and support corporations' projects. Our idea is that the private sector is the only one collectively, all corporations together, which can reach the critical mass to trigger and also accomplish this great agroecological transition that has been mentioned. So this foundation will try to engage as many possible corporations with the highest possible impact with their own projects. And it will help these corporations to have maximize their impact. Our support will be in 3 areas. One is knowledge. The scientific committee, he's represented by Chairman Paolo Vinés, will support a corporation in assessing the project, the company's project in terms of regeneration. Is it regenerative or not? And how big can be the impact of projects? This will be very much the scientific support. Will also help presenting bankable projects to financial institutions. So we'll have a network of investors and financial institutions supporting this kind of project, which we will help presenting for financement. So the financement will go directly to corporations, and the foundation will help companies to present bankable projects. The foundation will also help in setting up private-public partnerships, because this has not been said yet. Nothing can help happen without the public. The public cannot go anywhere without the private, and vice versa. If we have a private project, we, as we proved here in this presentation, need to have the collaboration of the public sector as well. So forging public-private partnership works better if there is a collection of company instead of only one, and so representation can be made through the foundation. And last but not least, we will support also in measurement and reporting, because still now reporting is very, let's say, confused yet, and sometimes is not even very transparent. There are systems which are the most, let's say, knowledge or official, for instance, in investment, like the ESGs, there have still many problems to be solved. And we believe that our foundation can provide a framework for measurement in a scientific based way and with a certified systems.
Thank you, Andrea. And I take advantage of this answer, this question and answer, to add that there are also projects by single founders or group of founders of our foundation, which are, let's say, incubated by the foundation itself, and propose for a scalable model. One of these is a very new project, which has been started by Davines Group, but other founders are joining already, which is the first European Center for Organic Regenerative Agriculture by Rodel Institute and Davines Group, which will be born, and it is born already, but will be started its activity in Parma, in the Parma region, in the next year. So this is one example of what a single company, but also with a joint ideas and effort of the other companies within the Regenerative Society Foundation are doing and will do. So thank you for all the questions, which were very interesting and helped the debate to be alive. And I would like to give the final word for closing remarks to Gladys.
Giovanna, and thank you to the panelists for a very, very engaging panel. I would like to start with some comments that were made by Luca Linovi. And Luca was sharing with us the approach and the focus of the program that they're developing. I particularly would like to highlight when he mentioned gender equality. We heard during this week that women and children are 14 times more likely to die from climate disasters than men. So a focus on gender equality, on women and children, is fundamental. And I appreciate very much the fact that the team in the program is actually addressing this problem. Luca also mentioned the importance of local indigenous knowledge and local viable solutions. This is key because developing sophisticated technologies that help us to analyze and to provide timely data is quite important. But sophisticated technologies can only work if we have the local capacity to analyze that data and to provide advice and recommendations on a timely manner as well. I like very much the fact that we focus also on local indigenous knowledge, because the progress and development cannot ignore that there are traditional farming practices that are sustainable, and we need to continue supporting those traditional farming practices, supporting that local indigenous knowledge that has demonstrated that they can deliver results in a sustainable way. I would also like to recall the words of Renzo Tomellini, especially with regards to geospatial and remote sensing technologies. During this week, on Tuesday, we had a share fair here in this pavilion where over 20 speakers presented tools and applications of geospatial technology. Developing that kind of data is crucial for our organizations. Providing that kind of data and making sure that we're collecting, storing, and analyzing that kind of data is fundamental so that we can provide the recommendation and the analysis that is needed. Not only to monitor and evaluate our interventions and make sure that our climate investments are going where they're supposed to go, but also to enhance our early warning systems. Ifad partners with the European Space Agency, with FAO, and with other agencies to collect data and to enhance our ability to be able to respond to the needs of our stakeholders and beneficiaries. So I really appreciate that you mentioned that, as well as the role of frontier technologies. Food safety is as important as food security, but also in blockchain offers the possibility to help us trace back to the origin. One advantage of tracing back to the origin is, for example, that we can, for the areas that are producing in ways that are sustainable, we can increase the income of those small scale farmers by being able to guarantee to the consumer and increase their trust in their products by guaranteeing with technologies like blockchain that the product that they're buying is actually coming from the areas that they think that product is coming. And you know, there are other ways to inform the consumer about that, but blockchain technology provides a really high level of probability that what the consumer is buying in at the supermarket is actually coming from those areas that they want to support. So again, frontier technologies, artificial intelligence is key also so that we can also enhance our capability for data analysis. You also mentioned the importance of diversity, inclusion, and equality so that we can really have open innovation. And we have plenty of data and research that shows that true open and sustainable, impactful innovation can only happen if we have true inclusion, diversion, and equality. Then to close, I would like to go back to the words by Andrea Illy on the importance of having a systematic approach to the interventions that we design. So innovation is about creativity, and innovation is about supporting ideas. I very much appreciate it. I don't remember right now if it was Professor Vinay's or Andrea Illy that mentioned this, but accepting failure. So welcoming ideas, testing those ideas, but also accepting failure, embracing failure, and failing fast, learning from those failures, and as we learn, develop better tools and better innovative approaches so that we can address the challenges that we're facing. In terms of the systematic approach, Andrea mentioned, for example, the development of this proof of concept and how you intend to scale up the programs and the initiatives of the foundation. So inspired by those words about the systematic approach, I would like to make reference to how Ifad is supporting innovation. So the approach that Ifad has for innovation is an approach that is based on the Silicon Valley approach of agility and of lean entrepreneurship combined with the UN Innovation Toolkit. And when we talk about systematization, we also talk about developing innovation by stages, but also stopping and evaluating and learning from each stage of innovation. That kind of learning is crucial so that we can mitigate risk and we can deliver the results that we want to deliver. So on that, I would just like to focus on now certain principles that we would like to foster and to mainstream, not only, and recommend also to the foundation so that in the work that we do together, these are principles that we all implement in developing new tools and supporting innovation. So first of all, we want to design with the user. The user is fundamental. So our solutions need to be human-centered. We need to remember that technology per se is useless unless we are designing for the user, and we're designing with the user. So from the beginning, let's get that user involved. Second, it's fundamental that we understand the ecosystem and that we understand very, very well the context where ideas are being designed and implemented. Third, we need to design for scale. And Andrea Ili mentioned that as well, that we need to secure funding from the beginning, but also secure partnerships, the strategic partnerships that actually can help us scaling up when we identify ideas that can actually deliver an impact. We need to build for sustainability. So sometimes we develop technologies that are extremely sophisticated, but then they become unsustainable because they are perhaps, difficult to implement or they're not affordable. So from the beginning, let's think about designing for scale and for sustainability. You also mentioned that we need to be data-driven and in the importance of information, right? So we need to enhance also, not only governments, but also our partners in the field, the private sector, civil society, academia. We need to enhance the quality and the capability to analyze data. That's also fundamental. And to make sure that we are science and evidence-based when we are making decisions about where to go next with our interventions. Use open standards, open data, open source, and open innovation is also fundamental for sustainability. We also need to reuse and improve. So that's the importance of knowledge sharing that Andrea Ili was describing before. So we have a product at Ifad that is called the Ifad Innovation Talks. And I would like to invite you to join us in these monthly appointments of the Ifad Innovation Talks, where knowledge sharing is at the key, at the center of our partnerships. We need to address privacy and security. So guaranteeing that stakeholders and beneficiaries, users, their data is protected, is stored in a way that that is conformant to standards like to regulation like the GDPR. And last, we need to be collaborative. So as part of being collaborative, I would also like to invite everybody to join the Ifad Innovation Network. It's about collaboration. It's about bringing together what Andrea Ili was mentioning before, bringing together the private sector, civil society, governments, academia, research institutions, the United Nations, all collaborating so that we can share lessons, so that we can share the knowledge that our agencies, our organizations are developing, but most importantly, create those fundamental strategic partnerships that can actually help us scaling up in the future. Thank you.
Thank you all.